Jesse Edwards got paid a bag to transfer to West Virginia, and it opens up the question once again into Syracuse's approach to NIL. There is a lot to break down. Is this a case of Jesse just getting his bag and someone paying and saying, we're going all in on Jesse Edwards? Or does it lead to a greater instance where we need to examine what Syracuse is doing at a greater scale? It's your Locked On Syracuse Monday. Let's get the ball rolling.
Are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up? Good morning. Happy Monday. And thank you so much for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today and every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Owen Valentine, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On to get started. We got a lot to talk about today. Some big news over the weekend. And a lot of it. Joe Girard was on a visit at LSU. Jesse Edwards announced his top three at the end of last week, went on a visit to West Virginia and said, I liked it so much, I'm not going anywhere else. I'm not checking another visit. This checked every single one of my boxes. I am going to go to West Virginia. And Jesse Edwards officially transferring to West Virginia. As someone pointed out, I forget who it was, maybe a little bit of revenge for the last time Syracuse and West Virginia faced off in the tournament. Syracuse got the best of them back then. West Virginia getting the best of Syracuse this time around. Jesse Edwards, ranked by many as the number 3 or 4 player in the transfer portal, a 14 and change point per game guy, going to be number 4 in the portal. And I'm not sure personally, I'll lead with this. I don't know if it landed to me how good other people see Jesse Edwards until I saw that ranking. To see him at 4 in the portal said a lot to me as to the level of player and the caliber player that people see him as. And he is gone. He is out of this program. He is transferring to West Virginia. For the first time in however long, he's out tweeting. It looked weird to see him in yellow and gold, or in yellow and gray, I think was the picture he posted with his announcement to go play for Huggy Bear. And it's weird. It's different. This is maybe I'm missing someone, but one of the bigger transfers out with regards to Syracuse in terms of I know he's going to be successful wherever he lands. You look at a guy like Jalen Carey, you look at a guy like Bryson Goodine. They're guys that could be, contributors where they land. I put Symir Torrance in that same boat actively right now, a guy that could be a contributor. But Jesse Edwards, as of late, is the biggest name that Actually, I will say Quincy Guerrier as well. I'll throw that in the mix. But Quincy and Jesse are the two that wherever they land, they're going to do something good. They're going to do something big. And they're going to be a major contributor. And now there's a huge, huge hole for Syracuse you need to fill. And a big question here, as we look into some of the details and the quotes behind, Jesse's transferring. And it was an article from ESPN that gave a little bit of insight as to the rationale behind him transferring. And there were some very, very glaring quotes in this article. It was ESPN, Jonathan Gavoni on the article, I believe, or tweeted it out from ESPN. I forget who wrote the ESPN article. But the big quote that stands out, and I'm sure most people have seen or heard this at this point in time, it was Jonathan with the article. It has to do with the rationale behind his transferring, saying, quote, "I mostly wanted to have a fresh start and a new challenge." Makes sense. That's why most people transfer, right? Looking for something different, looking for something new. He's going to now play for two Hall of Fame coaches in his college career. This is where things get interesting because this quote right here seems like a direct contradiction of itself. Quote, "NIL isn't what I'm playing for. I didn't really want to get into this, but it doesn't seem that Syracuse as an organization is that into that. I'm not really sure what their plan is or what the school's idea is behind it. For me, it was something they couldn't offer in that way." So, on the one hand, he wants a fresh start. He wants to go somewhere new. Makes all the sense in the world. And then he says NIL wasn't a factor. And in the same paragraph of one quote, consecutive speaking, he is still talking from when he says NIL isn't what I'm playing for. He says Syracuse couldn't offer me NIL wise what West Virginia would, which is, basically saying that NIL was the reason. And there's a lot to look into with regards to that because we have had a number in the past 7 or 8 days, a number of major conversations regarding Syracuse's approach to NIL and their ability to use NIL to get players, to keep players, and to expand on their program and to improve the overall program that they have in Central New York. Adam Weitzman and Syracuse breaking off. You lose Jesse to the portal. A couple of other things involved as well, where you're starting to look at, is Syracuse's approach going to work towards NIL? We'll talk about that in a second. And I have no official backing to this, but I think it's worth talking about because it's sort of a balancing act here. Word on the street, the rumor right now, and once again, this is not something I have confirmed. This is not something that has been, confirmed via reports. But the number that I consistently am hearing is $750,000 or $800,000 for Jesse Edwards to transfer to West Virginia. That was the number. That was the workaround and the number that they were able to do with an out-of-country visit and some sort of appearance showing whatever to get Jesse that money. It's a lot of money for 1 year. So on the one hand, I have to preface with that when all is said and done, I am okay with Syracuse not using $800,000 to bring Jesse back in for 1 year. So the one part, and that's where you're sort of trying to balance it out, and they're not mutually exclusive. They can happen at the same time, right? West Virginia could have overpaid for Jesse Edwards, and Syracuse can still have an NIL issue. I want that to be very, very clear as I continue this episode and continue to share, my thoughts on that whole situation, right? If $800,000 or $750,000 for 1 year is what Jesse Edwards got, good for him. Because I think that's way more than he was getting at Gonzaga, who was in his top three, or at Kansas, who was in his top three, or what Syracuse can pull together to offer. Good for you. You made your money. Dad played agent. You got people into a bidding war, and you made a lot of money as a result of it. All the props in the world, right? We say it with regards to the draft. If you are a player who can make however much money, who's to tell you not to go get paid, right? It makes sense. It makes sense, right? You want to make money. You want to be able to. $800,000, if that number is correct, for what it's worth, is fringe second round NBA draft money. It's a little bit below, but that's a decent number if that number is correct. And additionally, that's life-changing money. That's life-changing money for anybody in the world. Let's go. I'm going to Google as I talk here. Average income in the United States. Average income in the United States is $31,000. So let's do 800 divided by 30 on average. Jesse Edwards, if that number is correct, just made about 25 to 30 years salary for the average individual income in the United States. Go get your money. Respect to you. Good luck. Tip the cap. It's like, it makes sense. But I still think, and this is where we'll go after a quick break, I still think we need to examine Syracuse's approach to NIL and continue to deep dive into it with the information that we have available. Because NIL is something that it's sort of like, a lot of people, if you look at really famous YouTubers, sort of beat around the bush of how much money do you make from YouTube? Or a lot of famous people, how much money did you make for this, right? You sort of avoid it. And NIL is sort of that similar thing where you like to kind of cover up how much a guy got paid or how much a player got paid or how much this deal is worth and things like that. So we'll take a quick break and we'll continue this conversation on the other side. But before we do that, let's chat a little bit about our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Grand slams, no hitters, double plays, they're all back. There's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook because right now new customers can step up to the plate with a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up, place your first bet, and get $1,000 back in bonus bets, or up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. You can talk Aaron Judge props. You can do strikeout props with pitchers. You can do a same game parlay, piecing together a few guys to get a hit, maybe an extra base hit. So don't miss your chance to get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Okay, let's continue. Owen Valentine, Locked On Syracuse, Monday. We got to, it's sort of this weird balance that I'm trying to lay out here is one, Jesse Edwards got paid in theory. If that number is correct, $800,000 or $750,000. If that number is correct, Jesse Edwards got his bag. Good for him. But we still look right now in Syracuse's approach to NIL. And it's got a lot of people questioning. And there are a number of people that are going to say, a guy like that, we don't want to do that. You got to stay within the rules. The rules in regards to NIL are non-existent right now. The rules say that for you to pay somebody, they have to make an appearance. They have to do a charitable activity. Your charitable activity could be 1 hour of volunteer work, of 1 hour of appearances, and make hundreds of thousands of dollars for doing that, right? It's not a gigantic commitment on the player end to get this money. And there is no supervision. And we understand that because what are you seeing, right? There's a few small instances of people being looked into. The NCAA said, here's NIL. We don't want to deal with it anymore. We battled this back and forth. The push for NIL. Players need to be paid. People need to be compensated. And they said, yeah, sure, here it is. Go do what you want with it. And Syracuse seemingly is trying to do this in a different way. And Jesse Edwards pointed it out. So even if they can't have enough to pay for Jesse Edwards, which is fine, that's not the issue here. But Jesse pointed out what could be the bigger issue at hand, and that is Syracuse's approach to NIL. Rumor on the street, I don't know the exact details. I'm sure there's more details, but we do know right now that Adam Weitzman and Syracuse are not linked anymore. Weitzman bringing celebrities to games, trying to get some exposure, offering $1 million to bring players in, things of that nature, no longer happening. There's been that divorce, that separation. And the question at hand as a response to that is, why would you push out a guy who consistently has shown that he will do what it takes to support Syracuse? And is it a looks thing? Is it an optics thing? Is it the publicity of it? We don't like that because of certain reasons. I know one thing about Adam Weitzman in terms of the way he approached this, and this is something that John Wildek said in an interview with Brent Axe. This is something that Adam Weitzman consistently mentions in interviews about NIL. in tweets about NIL, in conversations about NIL, is he never was going to do anything NIL wise without consulting a lawyer and consulting Syracuse compliance. So although there's this big publicity to it, he wasn't going about things illegally. He wasn't going about things knowingly breaking NCAA rules with regards to NIL. He was asking the questions before decisions were made and operating in that capacity. And that is gone. And right now, the reality of NIL is that it is MLB free agency, it is NFL free agency, it is NBA free agency, in that you are in bidding wars incredibly consistently to bring players in. That is the reality of Jesse Edwards departing. That is the reality of a guy like Hunter Dickinson in the portal. That is the reality of recruiting right now and the amount of money that it costs to bring in a certain player or to maintain a certain player, which is going to be another big one, especially, and this is something we'll discuss greater at another time, I think especially with regards to Syracuse football. We've seen Syracuse football time and time again take a 3-star athlete or a 3-star player and turn them into an NFL caliber type player, where you know going into their junior year that they are that type of player. Jahad Carter in that conversation right now, Deuce Chestnut in that conversation right now. The maintaining players part is going to be a huge deal because you are going to have your powerhouse programs, your Ohio States, your LSUs, your Alabamas, your Georgias, your big perennial powerhouses in football, your national title contenders in the football landscape, who are going to have their pick at the players that smaller schools, that lower tier Power 5 schools, that non-Power 5 schools develop, and be able to offer them hundreds of thousands of dollars to be able to transfer to their school. That is the reality. And Wildhack, in an interview with Brent Axe, talked about Syracuse's approach to NIL. And the approach has been, as mentioned, and this was a few months ago, that they would rather spread the NIL money out than get a few select players paid bigger dollars. And I'm going to also throw this in there because sometimes people like to act like I am unaware of the fact that Syracuse University doesn't directly control the NIL money and that it's something done outside of Syracuse University. You're correct. That is the rule. That is what happens. But you're telling me that when it comes to a recruit making money in NIL numbers or transfers making money in NIL numbers, that Syracuse isn't in somebody's ear about where that money is going to go or where you want to talk about players and how much you could make or who is the most valuable or who's the most important in terms of reaching out to collectives like the 315 Foundation or when he was here, Adam Weitzman. You don't think that conversation doesn't exist? I'm saying at Syracuse, I'm saying at Duke, Kentucky, Gonzaga, any program in college, period, they're not going to be, pushing transfers NIL wise to come to their school without being in somebody's ear about NIL money. And Syracuse wants to make it, as Wildhack also said in that interview, the more traditional methods of NIL, which is the way it was intended to be used. Okay. So the way it was intended to be used is what you want to do. You want to make it so that your local businesses are reaching out. Great. I love it. Have your local businesses be involved. And this is not a knock on local businesses right here, but what is happening and what the reality is that local businesses do things with players that are already there. If you're a local business and you're spending however many thousands of dollars, 10 grand, we'll say, as a random number to throw out there. If you're going to spend 10 grand NIL wise on an athlete, it's going to be, in terms of advertising, in terms of bang for your buck, a player that people know in Central New York, and a player that people like in Central New York. And you're not going to be throwing out throw a random recruit out there. This is not, evidence based. It's just a hypothetical. And we won't even throw a name out there. Hey, 4-star recruit who has Syracuse in their top 6. Would you like to do this advertising deal with us? No, that's not a smart advertising move for a local company. So it's great as supplementary money there, right? If your local businesses, your Tully's, for example, if you're going to go sports bar type deal, maybe Tully's wants to do with someone who's here. But that money, and this is not a knock on Tully's, is supplementary money. Tully's is not going to say, here, no 4-star recruit, here's $500,000 to come play at Syracuse. Or if you come play at Syracuse, if you're going to do some ads with us. And that's not what you're going to do. It's not a financially smart move. And so what you need is these collectives and big name guys and big time donors to be able to have the money to bring in the caliber players that will bring Syracuse to national prominence. And right now, I don't know if you can do that. I don't know if you have that amount of money. And these collectives, we don't know how much money is in there. We don't know how much money they're able to offer to a guy like JJ Starling, who did transfer in and is signed and a part of this program, right? How much NIL money was he getting? Things of that nature. It would probably benefit from having a guy in Adam Weitzman who is willing to hand you millions of dollars to bring players in exchange for working for his company, advertising for his company, doing sponsorships for one of his companies. So what? You have to put up with celebrities being at basketball games. You have to put up with an Instagram post or a tweet of him and the celebrity. Oh, well. God, that's terrible. That's brutal. You want to claim that he is just doing it for clout. He's just doing it for attention. Attention. Oh, well, charitable if you want attention. Who cares? This is a guy giving you millions to help you improve. He did it with Boeheim's Army, paying players before, in theory, they win their $1 million TBT tournament. He did it to support them. He's done it to, he paid an FAU guy $10,000. And the counteraction, the argument is, oh, well, he needed attention in order to do that. Would you rather somebody want attention or a little bit of promotion for donating $10,000 or paying somebody $1 million? Or would you rather them just be gone? And we got that answer. We would rather someone be gone. And a number of people in the Syracuse fan base are overjoyed that he's gone because they can't handle the fact that he posted some pictures afterwards. How does that impact your life? And the other argument is going to be, and I'm just sort of on a tangent here, but that's where the episode brought me. The other argument is, what wins has he directly resulted in? None. He is not on the court. He's not a player. Okay. What has he done for Syracuse? Millions, first of all. Elijah Moore, in theory. Players on basketball teams right now, football teams right now. So he doesn't correlate to wins exactly. But right now, what has Syracuse NIL-wise done to correlate to wins? And that answer is nothing. And the reality is Adam Weitzman was trying to do that and to bring players in at a level that can allow them to win games and to be better than they were. And so, you got Tom Brady at a game. You get Jimmy Fallon at a game. You get Gronk at a game. You get who else was at games, right? Insert celebrity here. A Boogie with the hoodie. Who else you want to have, right? It's cool. You got people coming to Syracuse. And in all honesty, Syracuse isn't a city that's getting incredibly hype national prominence, right? It's top 10 in crime. It's top 10 in poverty, right? Things like that. It's not in top 10s for good reason. It's not in football top 10s. It's not in basketball top 10s. It's not in top 10 places to live, right? And you got a guy trying to promote Central New York, and we push him out, and we want nothing to do with him. And that is the issue of Syracuse and NIL right now. John Wildack, direct quote from an interview with Brent Axe. I don't want to get into bidding wars for players. But you just lost a bidding war, and you just lost your fifth-year big man coming back for a year where he could have been an all-ACC first-team caliber player. And we lost that bidding war. So you don't want to get into bidding wars, but now we're starting to see the results of things like that. To bring in a guy like Hunter Dickinson, you're going to need to win a bidding war. To bring in a guy like even lower tier, Abu Usman, you're going to need to win a bidding war of some sort. To bring in a guy like Musa Cisse, you're going to need to win a bidding war of some sort. Campus still plays a factor. Coaching still plays a factor. Program still plays a factor. But as Jesse Edwards said, right, I wanted a fresh start. But when all is said and done, it was an NIL-based decision. And I don't mean that as disrespect for Jesse Edwards. But this was an NIL money-based move. And there's not really a way to hide that or beat around it or look somewhere else, because that is what it was. Syracuse, and you can say that, West Virginia paid more and too much and more than you want to pay. That is fine. I can understand that argument. Syracuse lost a bidding war, and they're losing a big-time talent because they couldn't get to that level. And what can they do? And other players are going to, right? Usman, Cisse, whoever it is, NIL is going to play a factor in their recruitment. Word on the street, the rumor out there is that Syracuse offered half of the offer for West Virginia. If you have $400,000 right now, go out and get a big. Go out and get a big. And get another guard too, because you need two guys in the portal. And that is where we will continue for our everydayers later this week as we progress. That'll do it for today's episode. Thanks for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today and every day. I will catch you tomorrow. I'm Owen Valentine. If you are not already, please subscribe, turn on the notification bell. When I post at a random time, you'll get a notification. You'll know instantly when these videos go live. I'm Owen. I'll catch you tomorrow. Be kind, make somebody smile, and enjoy your Monday. Have a good one, everybody.